Hello, and welcome to the SAF Magazine podcast. I am your host, Anna Simet. You've tuned in to our panel preview series for the upcoming North American SAF Conference and Expo, which is highlighting speakers from the show, and that's being held in Minneapolis, September 22nd through the 24th. And for this series, we've been chatting with some of our panelists and previewing what they plan to discuss during their panel discussions. Today, we have with us Eric Schenck from the Minnesota Forest Resources Council. Eric, hello, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Anna.
We're so glad to have you here, Eric. And I think a good starting point would be tell us a little bit about yourself and the Minnesota Forest Resources Council.
Yeah, I'm Executive Director of the Minnesota Forest Resources Council. The council is a 17-member body that's appointed by our governor, and they represent different stakeholder interests. So we'll have on the council, for instance, loggers, a logger representative of environmental groups. We have land management representatives, so the Forest Service, the DNR, county land managers are represented. So all across a broad spectrum of forest stakeholders who share in a common concern and commitment to maintaining the forests of Minnesota in a sustainable fashion that balances the economy, the ecology, and the social values of our forests.
Okay. So your presentation, it's called Wheels Up with Wood, Advantages of a Forest-Based SAF Feedstock in Minnesota. And in your presentation, you're going to get into the data on the renewable underutilized supply of woody biomass in Minnesota. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Sure. A lot of people don't even realize that jet airplanes, commercial jet airplanes in particular, can be flown with jet fuel made out of wood. And it's not really a novel idea. In fact, in 2016, in the state of Washington, Alaskan Airlines flew a jet from Seattle to Washington, D.C., using a blend of sustainable aviation fuel made from wood, a 20% blend. And so this is one of the interesting things that has brought us to the conference. And we're going to talk more about how that's possible, the importance and benefits of using wood, and what it means really from a forestry point of view, because we're not into making jet fuel. What we're into is healthy forests, but yet this potential market is important to that healthy forest component.
Good answer. So this underutilized supply of woody biomass, can you quantify at all what we're looking at here in Minnesota?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with how much wood does it take to make sustainable aviation fuel? And in the forestry sector, we talk a lot about cords. And so a cord is about a ton of wood. And so that cord or a ton of wood will make about 100 gallons of sustainable aviation fuel. So when you're thinking about, well, what would that scale up to? And at one time, we had a market for about enough wood that would create about a 500,000 gallons of sustainable aviation fuel. And we have at least twice as much of that wood available in our forest. And the thing about the wood that we have that's available, I tell everyone it's all just lying on the ground. So this is things like residuals from logging operations, the limbs and the tops and damaged parts of trees that aren't otherwise usable. It's dead and dying wood that's been killed by insects or disease or by extreme weather. It can even be mill residuals, so the sawmill residuals, the sawdust, all of that can be used to make sustainable aviation fuel. And again, it's just out there lying on the ground, looking for a market for someone to have the economic incentive to harvest it.
Okay, so Eric, an important component of this whole conversation around SAF is carbon decarbonization. And you had mentioned you're going to discuss implications of new research to account for and forecast forest carbon across the state's entire forestry sector. Can you preview this a little bit more for us?
Sure. So in Minnesota, we invested in a comprehensive forest carbon life cycle assessment. And what that did was it looked like at the entire life cycle of carbon from when it's sequestered by the trees, stored in its biomass, harvested, and then, where does that biomass and carbon go? Some of it goes into forest products, but some of it can also go into a use like sustainable aviation fuel. And so what we know about the forest carbon in Minnesota is that our forests are growing. They sequester and store more carbon every year. Over the next 25 years, we're expecting the amount of the carbon stored in our forest to increase by about 15%. And so we have an abundant supply of forest carbon in the forests, and as I mentioned, in the form of dead and dying wood. And that carbon supply can be sustainably harvested under safeguards that we have and best management practices to produce a substantial amount of sustainable aviation fuel.
Okay. Well, I have to say I was born and raised in North Dakota. And so when I moved here, I was absolutely amazed at all the trees. I mean, you wouldn't think like two neighboring states would be so different, but it's incredible.
Well, the nice thing about North Dakota is you can almost see our trees from there. There's not a lot obstructing the view.
Right. True story. Thanks for that great answer, Eric. The next question I have for you is, there are some near-term state and federal opportunities to pave a pathway for SAF from woody biomass. So tell us a little bit more about what you'll discuss and why attendees might be interested.
Well, one of probably the easiest pathways to get to producing SAF is using our mill residuals. Right now, those are byproducts of existing forest products production. And so they're basically waste materials, and they can be turned into SAF. And that wood waste is composed of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Those are all parts of the compounds that make up wood. And all three of those can be converted into aviation fuel. And the really important part as it pertains to the future of the SAF industry and how it relates to climate change is that by using wood, the carbon intensity of that fuel that's produced is extremely low. It's in the range of about 15 or 16. And so when you're comparing wood-based sustainable aviation fuel with other types of aviation fuel made out of other feedstocks, we have a very low carbon footprint. And that's a great thing. And the other good thing is SAF made out of wood can be blended with SAF made out of other feedstocks, whether it's agriculture or oils or whatever it might be. So we think, a really great product that fits in with the future of sustainable aviation fuel.
Really well explained, Eric. I don't want to give away too much about your presentation. So, we'll wrap it up. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I think that Minnesota is going to be a trendsetter with this. As I mentioned, in 2016, it was proven that you can fly planes with residual wood from logging and other forest activities. And 10 years later, I think we're going to see that idea repeat itself in Minnesota. And we just happen to be unique in terms of having the juxtaposition of forest and agriculture in this major Minnesota St. Paul airline hub that creates the opportunity, the perfect mix of opportunities for us in the state to really lead in the innovation of the sustainable aviation fuel future.
Totally agree. I think it's just the perfect location for this event. And with that, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Eric. I sure look forward to your talk at the conference.
Thanks, Anna. I look forward to actually meeting you there.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. And to our listeners, learn more or register at safconference.com. Hope to see you at the Minneapolis Convention Center, September 22nd through the 24th. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.